Good evening, you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Cassius. I am the host and creator of the KB Kingdom channel, and welcome. If you're new to the channel, I enjoy talking about everything card fight Vanguard related, especially focusing on the TCG, and especially today since we'll be doing a deck profile featuring Gold Paladin's Knight of Fury Agravain. So this deck profile is specifically about Gold Paladin. It's the V-Series version of Knight of Fury Agravain. Before in the Limit Break era, he used to be a Mega Blast unit, but now he's got a much better upgrade. And I'm very happy to say that this is officially my avatar for the Gold Paladin clan, as unfortunately, Sagramore, you'll always be in my heart, but you need a little more stuff, buddy, and then you'll be up there one day. But as of right now, I've enjoyed playing Agravain, even in this meta. It's still a really fun deck. However, compared to Vanquisher and Rev and the other Excel decks, he's just not up there yet with the support that we currently have for it. But this is the deck build that I've been able to make with all the cards I have available to me, and with just a few hours of practice and just playing against the meta and just understanding what's going on right now, I've been able to come up with a deck recipe that, while it's got some uniqueness to it, in my personal opinion, especially the strategy behind it, as I try really not to focus on the main strategy that most players go for when playing this deck. So I go with more of my own strategy and mindset depending on especially the matchup, but I'll get more into that later on in the deck profile. So without further ado, let's begin. Alright you guys, so to start off the deck profile, I'll be going from grade 0s to grade 3s. So I'll start this off right away with the newest starter for Gold Paladin, Spring Breeze Messenger. I feel as though he's more fitting for this deck profile, and I got a little tired of seeing Criff all the time, especially after his whole dilemma. So Spring Breeze Messenger for a new start. Next up onto our triggers, we play 8 front triggers, 4 copies of Dauntigal, 2 copies of Knights of Forcefulness, Knaves, and then 2 copies of Greeting Drummer. So we play 8 front triggers in this deck, and the reason why I play 8 front triggers in this deck is that Gold Paladin, many of its units, while they do have great skills to get more units on the board, there aren't too many abilities that we have that actually allow us to gain more and more power so that we can hit bigger numbers against our opponent's columns. So even though we have the multiple attacks, the strategy really seems for this deck is to go fast and with a lot of poking attacks early game so that you can put more pressure on your opponent so they can't take as much damage later, which is honestly the strategy behind this deck, which is a really good early game, and then late game you can just use your skills naturally so you don't have to spend so many resources from your hand. But 8 front triggers, in my personal opinion, is still the best way to go, simply because while crits are threatening, you might just have one super powerful column, or you might only have one really strong attacker, especially after you use Agravain's ability, and that just might not be enough, especially on its own, considering the amount of cards and draw powers that a lot of these decks have now, and that the first Vanguard or grade 2 Vanguard just offers so many resources that your opponent might be able to get access to, where if you're using crits versus fronts, it's just not as threatening. So I believe that using fronts to increase the power of all the units that you may or may not call just alone from Agravain's skill is just more of a threat, because now that's more attacks they have to deal with, the more cards they have to take out of their hand to block. So that's why I'm playing 8 front triggers in this deck, simply because I feel as though in this deck it applies more pressure than crits would, although adding crits to the deck would be nice. Next up, I play 4 copies of the Draw Trigger PG. This deck does need draw, so that's why I feel as though 4 copies of the Draw Trigger PG is necessary, because while you do have some draw powers such as Sagramore and Drain, you need to get to your pieces and want to make sure that you can still maintain a good hand size so that you can either call from hand to get Agravain's skill, or have units that you can get from drawing into them and use their effects to do superior calls from the deck to help with Agravain's skill. So for me personally, 4 Draw Trigger PGs is still very useful and viable in this deck. And then we play 4 copies of Elixir Sommelier. It's a heal trigger, pretty standard, self-explanatory, but if you need a reason, it heals and it has good shield. Can't argue with that. And then moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 copies of Stronghold of the Black Chains Hoel. For those of you that do not know its ability, it is continuous rearguard circle. Your other unit in the same column as this unit that was placed this turn gets 5,000 power. And if you have Advance of the Black Chains Kahedin is on your Vanguard or Rearguard circle, it gets 10,000 power instead of 5,000. So a really good combo card, especially to have with Kahedins, considering the fact that we will be doing a lot of superior calling in this deck. So you're always guaranteed to get this effect off, at least for the 5,000, unless you don't have Kahedin in play. But this card helps in reaching those big numbers or good numbers that we were talking about earlier that this deck needs in order to succeed. So the purpose of this card is the fact that it can become an extremely strong booster to help break past your opponent's guard, considering the fact that many of your units don't have these power-up effects. So that's why 4 copies of Stronghold to the Black Chains Hoel is still very important in this deck to me. That and the fact that it does offer a draw to Kahedin. For our next grade 1, we play 4 copies of Listener of Truth Dindrain. And I just want to say that I finally got all of the congratulations full art versions. I know it's not a lot of money, but I decided to treat myself and just get the full arts of this card. But to go under her effect, it is auto rearguard circle. When placed by your card's ability, you may Soul Blast 1, and if you do, you may draw a card or countercharge 1, and this unit gets 3,000 power until the end of the turn. So just so that we're all clear, if you do the Soul Blast of 1, it is a choice to either draw a card or countercharge and get 3,000 power. You don't get to draw a card and get the power, and you don't get to countercharge and get the draw. That is not how it works. It's either draw a card or countercharge and get 3,000 power, as the card states. But we play this card simply because even though it is a Soul Blast, the ability to draw and countercharge is still very useful in the deck, considering the fact that many of our abilities do cost a counterblast, and Agravain, our main Vanguard, does cost a counterblast. So if our opponent were to damage deny us, we can use our abilities to hopefully call up to Drain, and she will take care of our countercharge issue if there is any. So that's why I still feel as though Dindrain is still viable in the deck, and I just think that she, even though she costs a Soul Blast, that Soul Blast of 1 is just very minimal in the deck, considering how quickly you can get Soul back with Agravain's ability. So that's why we play 4 copies of her, simply because she's too good to pass up on with her draw, countercharge, and power up. Alright you guys, so on to our last grade 1, we play 3 copies of Little Battler Trung. So happy to see him back, but let's give a little recap on his skill. His ability is auto on rearguard circle. When placed, you may counterblast 1, and this unit gets 5,000 power until the end of the turn. And then its other ability is auto Vanguard or rearguard circle. When its attack hits a Vanguard, if your Vanguard's grade is less than your opponent's, look at the top card of your deck and call it to the rearguard circle. So the first skill is really good. It helps reach a power threshold, and which is what this deck needs, because again, we need to hit those power columns so that we can hit our opponent, because we are an Excel deck and we just need the power. That's what we need. We need more power. Its second ability is, so let me clarify on this. So the second ability is, if your Vanguard's grade is less than your opponent's, you may look at the top card of your deck and call it to rearguard. So what this means is the fact that if this hits and you're both at grade 1, you still do get the skill. Reason being for it is your Vanguard and your opponent's Vanguard are still on the same level. I can't really explain it, but it just goes off the, I just go based off the anime, but I just think it's because your Vanguard and your opponent's Vanguard are on the same level, and that's why you still get the ability. But the main reason why we play 3 copies of this card instead of 2 is simply because every deck in the Vanguard game right now has at least one grade 1 that offers them something really amazing or something really resourceful. And for a Gold Paladin, I haven't really seen that grade 1 yet that offers us that, unless you want to play the 9K or... No, I just don't think that we have one. So playing Tron is helpful because it makes our grade 1 turn, it gives us something on our grade 1 turn that's actually resourceful. The Superior Call is still very helpful because it helps us set up an early game board so that we can go more for more attacks, or just having this and then calling out a grade 2 or 3 early in the game after the trigger is still very useful, because that means that now we can start our own early game rush at grade 1, because if we hit, we can Superior Call. So some people will guard and will just take a card out of our hand. So everything about this card is a plus. I just think that playing 3 of it was okay because I do want to see it in the beginning, because riding Dindrain isn't any fun. And Hoel, I'd rather see that card in the rear guard, so I figured it'd be better to just play a grade 1 that if I see it in the beginning, I know that it'll do something. Because if I go first, it may not do anything, but if I go second, I'm happy to have it. So that's why I feel like 3 copies of Little Battler Tron is still very good. And I do want to clarify, the Counterblast 1 for his first ability is actually mandatory. My bad. I thought it says when placed you may, but it's actually mandatory. So you do have to pay the counterblast to get him to 5,000 power. But that is all for our grade 1s, guys. And now we can move on to the grade 2s. We have 4 copies of Liberator of the Flute Escrad. So as Whistleosher said in his video, guys, Liberators are not coming back, and simply just because of this skill. So auto on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle when placed. If your Vanguard is Knight of Fury Agravain or Liberator of the Flute Escrad, you may look at the top card of your deck, call it to Rearguard Circle, then Counterblast 1. This unit gets 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So that is why Liberators aren't coming back. It doesn't synergize any of the old cards. It's not even an independent unit. But again, this is still really good to help with that early game rush as I was saying before. This, after getting a hit with Trung, helps you set up a column or just another row, so you can set up an attacks later. The card helps. It's a free call for no counterblast, and which is very useful. And if you need the power up, the counterblast one to get the power up is there, which is another thing that's very important in this deck, as again, we need to be able to hit those numbers. So being able to call a unit and still get the power up while either on an Excel marker or just on the rear guard with a column is very great to have. Plus, this unit is a staple in the deck considering the fact that it is really good Agravain support, and that's just why you want to play 4 copies of it, because if you're playing Agravain, this is a staple. And I just want to say, I like this artwork better than the old one. I think that they finally gave Escrad the justice that he deserves. Moving on to our next grade 2, we play 4 copies of Knight of Hard Work, Allenor, something like that, Allenor. His ability, or her ability, states, when it attacks, perform all of the effects below according to the number of rear guards you called this turn. 2 or more units, this unit gets 5,000 power until the end of that battle. If you called 4 or more units, then you may have it get 10,000 power. If you do, at the end of the battle, put this unit into your soul. So I just want to state for the record that this ability does stack. So if you call 2 or more, you get the 5k, and if you call 4 or more, you get the additional 10k. So this ability does stack, meaning that Allenor on its own can potentially be a 24k unit, which again is still very, very good in the deck, because now we have a unit that actually helps us reach those big numbers that we need, as he's really the only hard, heavy hitter in the deck that we have on its own, although you need to create multiple calls in order to reach that power break. But as we've seen in the deck with all the skills that we have, that shouldn't be a struggle for us at all, considering the fact that we are Gold Paladin. This card is a staple in this deck just for the simple reasons. You cannot play Agravain without this card. The first part is the fact that it helps you reach those numbers. The second part is the fact that the condition is free, no counterblast, and it works when you call it from the deck or hand. It puts itself into the soul, which helps you if you're trying to go for an Agravain turbo strategy. This will help you, but either way, it'll help you reach that threshold of 12 that you need in order to get that super awesome Agravain effect. So that's why you play 4 copies of Allenor, simply because it's a heavy hitter, gets us soul, and the skill is cheap in this deck because superior calling is so easy for us to do. So 4 copies of Allenor. And for our last grade 2, I play 4 copies of Advance of the Black Chains Kahedin. So this unit's ability is auto on Rearguard Circle. When placed, you counterblast 1, discard a card from your hand, look at 3 cards on the top of your deck, call 1 card from among them to the Rearguard Circle, shuffle your deck, and if Stronghold of the Black Chains Hoel is on your Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you may draw a card. So I just want to state for the record a few things about this card. You do get the effect if he is superior called from the deck, and if you call Hoel with its ability, I do believe that you do draw the card. No one's arguing me against it, but let me know in the comments below if I am wrong. But this card, again, helps us do some selective superior calling, so we can help keep more triggers in our deck and have control of our superior calling depending on what we need. It has synergy with Hoel, as it helps us get the draw that we are looking for and triggers Hoel's other ability. And the counterblast of 1 isn't too much of an expensive cost, but the discard isn't too bad either. But either way, this card helps us go cycle our deck, shuffle our deck, helps us draw a card, and helps us with more superior calling. And because his effect activates when he's called from hand or the deck, it synergizes with all the other cards. So if you top deck this card, then you just go 1, then you can use his skill to get 2, and that's 2 cards that you just called alone with this card. So you can use Agravaine's effect and get 2 superior calls for his skill. So that's why I play 4 copies of Kahedin, just because of the great synergy that it has with all the Gold Paladin decks, and the fact that it adds more calls so we can activate Agravain's skill to its fullest potential later. So 4 copies of Advance the Black Chains Kahedin. Next, we're moving on to our grade 3s. We play 3 copies of Battlefield Storm Sagramore. So Sagamore's effect is auto on Vanguard Rearguard Circle. When placed from hand, you Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and call a card from your hand to rearguard. So the purpose of Sagramore is so that we can activate Din Drain's ability just in case we draw into her, and since there's no way of cycling the Gold Paladin normal units that you have back into the deck, at least currently in Standard, you want to use Sagramore to activate Din Drain's effect. He's the backup to do that. He does cost 1 Soul Blast though, but as I stated before, Soul Blast is pretty cheap in this deck considering the fact that Agravaine's effect, builds him up so much soul. Plus his ability to call from the hand just adds 1 more call to what we have already. For our next grade 3 copies of full Cavalier Drag. So his ability is Act, Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. Once per turn, you may Soul Blast 1, look at the top card of your deck and call it to the rearguard circles. And one of your Vanguards gets 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So great synergy with Agravain. Another Soul Blast, however, it is a cheap cost in this deck because of Agravaine's ability. And something to note important about this card and why it's so popular in Agravaine's deck is when you use Agravaine's skill, which you'll see later, Agravain loses the ability to have a booster behind him and he doesn't get any power on his own. So the purpose of this card is that you play it, you use its ability, and you give Agravain 17k power, so that this way he can at least hit other Excel and Force numbers. It makes it easier for him to hit those thresholds on his own because he won't have a booster, which is exactly why we play this card. On its own, it's still pretty good. Individually, it can be a backup grade 3 if you needed to because you don't want to go into Sagamore, but this card just helps power up Agravain so he can reach those numbers that he needs to in order to be lethal as well, and he helps us get into more calls without the use of Counterblast. So that's why I played 3 copies of full Cavalier Dragon. I used to play 4, but I felt like 4 got clunky and I wanted to make space for more grade 1, so that's where the extra little Battler Tron comes in. And now we are finally here, ladies and gentlemen. Now we can enter the star of this deck profile himself, Knight of Fury Agravain. So let's start off with his ability, which is Auto on Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, Counterblast 1, put all of your rear guards into your soul. Look at the same number of cards from the top of your deck as the number of rear guards you called this turn. Call any number from among them to Rearguard Circle and shuffle your deck. Its second ability is Act, Vanguard Circle, Soul Blast 12, and until the end of this fight, your opponent can only call normal units, include superior calls. So let's start off and break down his first ability. So his first ability states that you Counterblast 1 and place all the rear guards you have in the soul. And based off the number of calls you made that turn, which means normal calls and superior calls, you look at that same number of cards from the top of your deck, and then you may selectively choose the unit that you wish to call to board. So this is really amazing because it's a battle effect too. So it happens when it attacks, meaning the units that you superior call out will be standing, which means that they can attack again, and hopefully if you pull front triggers because you're thinning out your deck so much from superior calling, now you have just more powered up units and more attacks coming your way. And with the Excel 1 marker that you'll mostly be playing in almost all of your matches, you're going to have a stronger side column that will be more lethal to your opponent because they just have so many attacks to deal with. But that is the first part of the skill, and then the second part of the skill, which is the main one, is Until the end of the fight, your opponent can only call normal units. So what this means is your opponent can literally only call normal units. Under no circumstances can they call a grade 0 from hand, from drop zone, or from deck. They can't even place a grade 0 in the Guardian Circle. They can only place normal units from any place that's placed. So that is the beauty of this card. It is so, if you could get to the 12 soul more consistently now, Agravain, in my opinion, would be a tier deck. However, unfortunately, Gold Paladin doesn't have that soul charge support, and we do have skills that cost us soul blast. Even the soul charges we get are somewhat neutral. But that 12 soul blast is really amazing, and when you do get it, it's pretty much death for your opponent, because now they lose their ability to defend with their best defending units. And even now a lot of people are playing the critical trigger with 30,000 shield, so Agravain becomes more lethal because now you're taking away their other PG option that they may or may not be playing. Although you do have to watch out because it's an extra critical trigger, but that is what makes Agravain so lethal. Because once you get to the 12 soul and you can do the soul blast, then you have pretty much game, because they just lost out on too much defensive power for your opponent. But the real strategy is by the time that you go into Agravain, your opponent will be at 2 to 3 damage. So when you use him, you just call out as many as you can from skills and hand, and then move those cards into the soul, and then go for another wave of attacks. And then by using the soul and as well as the superior calling, you'll be thinning out your deck to increase your chance of pulling front triggers so that you have much stronger calls to attack. And by the time that your opponent starts their turn, they'll have run out so many resources from either defending or they'll have taken so much damage that by the next turn that you go into, you'll either hopefully have the 12 soul for Agravain, or you'll just be able to go into Agravain again and just attack more lethal. But I do want to say that this is sort of like a turn 5 deck if the 12 soul is what you are going for, because Agravain, even Agravain Turbo, which is a completely different deck profile that I'll be showing you guys at a later time, even Agravain Turbo still needs that turn 3 unless you get the, 2 exact perfect setups to make that happen. But that is it for Agravain. That is what makes him so lethal, and that is what makes him so awesome, and so happy for me to call him my Gold Paladin avatar. Well, that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching my Agravain deck profile. Tell me what you're thinking in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe this video, and share this video to your friends if you enjoyed and want to give them some advice more on my Gold Paladin Agravain deck profile. But to finish this off, I'll just give my personal opinions on Agravain and how I feel about him in this meta. I think that comparing Agravain mainly just to the 2 top Excel decks that we have right now, which are Revan and Vanquisher, I want to say, to give him a letter grade, I'll give him a B. I'll give him just a flat B, and here's why. Comparing the deck to Vanquisher, which is honestly like the best Excel deck out right there right now, while they have the poking attacks, they have the multiple attacks, and they have the board manipulation, but in the sense of I can create more board rapidly with not so much cost. The issue comes down to is Vanquisher has extremely good board control, their multiple attacks are extremely strong, and Vanquisher can take advantage of Excel 2 to get more resources. And not only that, Vanquisher on itself just applies more and more power to the units that they already have. And along with that, you have the multiple attacking units that get more power on their own individually, which helps them create much stronger multiple attacks. Revan's early game is just too strong for this deck to handle. Unless you go first, or unless you go second and you get all your skills and you get good units from them, such as Trung and Escrad, then you're going to have a tough time really facing against Revan. Against a lot of the other Excel decks, like such as Nova Grappler and something that comes out of my head, Flapjacks, Nova Grappler and Murakumo, the matchup isn't so bad. You can create the board to handle Hyuga's board wipe, and as far as Nova Grappler goes, I've never had an issue with that. But overall, Agravain is still an amazing deck. It's just that for his strategy, specifically the 12 soul, which is what most people are trying to turbo into, we just need more support cards to make that work. But thank you guys again so much for watching. That is my final thoughts on Agravain. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I am the KP King, and I'm out.